Welcome back. Many Canadian businesses are anxiously watching the state of negotiations between each of Canada's big railway companies and the union representing thousands of workers. Both Canadian National Railway and Canadian Pacific Kansas City have said they will lock out unionized workers on Thursday if new agreements with the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference are not reached. For more on the impact of a potential rail lockout or work stoppage, we're joined now by Bob Masterson. He's president and CEO of the Chemistry Industry Association of Canada. Bob, thanks a lot for joining us. Let's remind viewers of what is already an impact of the potential for labor disruption on Canada's rail network. And that's, I think viewers may remember, that both railways halted the transport of dangerous goods, I believe, high hazard materials some time ago. So those goods already are not moving, and that includes chlorine, which we all depend on for our safe drinking water.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. If you receive drinking water that's treated from a distribution system, and that's 95% of Canadians, that drinking water is essential to be served by chlorine and chlorine derivatives. Those deliveries of chlorine are completely stopped now. And due to its high hazard nature, there are very limited inventories on stock. We've seen this issue coming before us for months, but our ability, we can't create large stockpiles because of the nature and the regulations on this material. So very limited inventories at our customer sites, including municipalities.
And so just expand on that a bit more. A typical Canadian water utility, how many days of inventory do they maintain? Yeah. And how it sounds crucial that this material start moving again.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's hard to say. It will depend on the municipality. But again, municipalities will be served either directly with chlorine and or chlorine derivatives, such as bleach, which is a large customer, all highly regulated how much they can keep on site. We would estimate 2 weeks, 14 days would be 10 to 14 days of supply before you start to get into difficulties. So it's a matter of days. That could be 14, it could be 21, it could be 30. It's days, it's not months. And the clock started to tick on Monday at midnight, and the railway stopped carrying these substances. So the clock is ticking. We're a week in already. What
other materials are crucial to are not moving or would not move under a labor outage that are crucial? I remember a couple of years ago when there was a rail blockade in Ontario. Yes. There was a big issue, I believe, about propane not making its way to Quebec.
Right. Well, what's not moving right now are what are called the toxic inhalation hazards. These are the most dangerous, all very essential goods, but very dangerous goods. And that would include things like certain forms of sulfuric acid. That's also used to treat wastewater, to make sure the wastewater that comes out is safe to go back in our rivers and lakes, etc. It also includes things like anhydrous ammonia, which is essential to producing fertilizers for food. And Canada is a major exporter of fertilizer. So those are a couple other examples of things that are suspended immediately. Paul, I think what people don't understand is we're so used to these strikes and disruptions. This is unprecedented to have both national railways suspending service at the same time. Our entire national transportation infrastructure, ports, distribution centers, railways is coming to a stop next week. We're just the canary in the coal mine. This is an issue for every industry and every Canadian.
So as we know, the Labour Minister yesterday rejected CN's request for binding arbitration. Do you have a view on that? Do you have a view on government, the involvement of the federal government in this situation, either arbitration order or indeed back to work legislation?
Well, absolutely. Certainly, you mentioned start lockout, but let's be clear, Teamsters has also given notice that it will strike at midnight on the 22nd. So all parties are clear. Service is completely disrupted on the 22nd. So, the Teamsters represent their members, the railways represent their shareholders. It's only the government of Canada that has the authorities and the tools to protect the public interest, the economy, and public safety. So, maybe the minister is not prepared to act now, but I think the message to the parties is the federal government has tools and it is prepared to use them to protect the national interest. That's a message that has to deliver to these parties and to force them to the bargaining table and to reach an agreement. And again, the clock is ticking.
Both of these railways reach deep into the United States, and I see in some of the notes that were compiled when one of our people interviewed you for this conversation is that there's concern in the U.S. about a Canadian rail strike.
Oh, well, absolutely. If you look at the big picture, just our industry alone, we're an export-oriented industry. $100 billion a year of chemical production. 80% of that goes into exports, and 80% of that, so 2/3 of all the production of chemicals in Canada go to the United States. Like every other sector of the economy, deeply integrated. If we can't get our chemistries into the U.S., it affects their auto industry, their forest products industry, their mining industry. So yeah, they're deeply concerned. But more specifically, just like we are here, we have facilities like a large chlorine facility in North Vancouver that supplies chlorine to all the major municipalities right down the west coast of the United States, including Los Angeles. So for sure, this issue is top of mind in the White House and with municipalities and state governments all the way down the coast. So I don't think Canada, at a time when we're about to renegotiate the USMCA trade agreement, wants to be in a position where America's economy and its public safety is harmed by labor disruptions in Canada. So that's part of this mix also.
So the stakes are very, very high. You've made that very clear. You must be optimistic that come Thursday of next week, this is going to be resolved.
I'm not optimistic, Paul. I'm not optimistic at all. And one reason is because we've had so many strikes and disruptions, West Coast ports, Port of Montreal, railways, rail blockades. I think as a society, we've become immune to it. And our job here is just to say, folks, in the past, we've been able to take extraordinary measures because we've always had at least one railway working. That's impossible now. Everything is going to come to a stop. And by the way, all chlorine, not some chlorine shipments, all chlorine shipments have come to a stop. We also look at the situation in Ottawa, and you know, let's be clear, the government has some challenges in its minority government situation. The signals are not lining up well for us to avoid a crisis, if not an outright emergency.
Bob Masterson, thank you for joining